Welcome to EPG Pathshala. In the paper Methodology of Research in Sociology, we will discuss the module titled Exploring the Field, Research Cycles in Qualitative Research. Over a period, in sociology, qualitative research has evolved as the most widely used method of research in understanding social reality. A large number of social scientists favor using qualitative research method in understanding social phenomena which are complex and challenging. In this module, we look at the nature and the characteristic features of qualitative research. As part of this, we will also look at the methods of data collection in qualitative research and also the methods of data analysis. As part of this, we will also look at the research cycles in qualitative research. Qualitative approach to research is applied in situations that demand exploration into unknown socio-cultural terrains, either in the form of new cultures, sociological processes, or meanings of human actions and values. These researches could explore a new population, a new problem, finding new concepts, new meanings, new variables, unravel a set of local vocabulary or classifications. In other words, these inquiries can potentially encounter entirely unexpected issues and situations. They aspire to richly capture human lives as a dynamic process rather than events through descriptions as the primary form of research output. Importance is given to insiders or unique perspectives and understanding the meaning they attribute to their actions and decisions. The research procedures employed in this approach are crafted in such a manner that they support this aspiration. This underlines the need for a flexible study design with openness in the selection of data collection methods and a responsive, reflexive way of selecting study participants. Aspects associated with data collection, data analysis, and inference making are expected to unfold as one proceeds into the study. As we would see, all the features of qualitative research that we are going to discuss in the paragraphs that follow immediately. We will look at the iterative and the cyclical nature of qualitative research procedures through a discussion on the features of qualitative research. First, we look at naturalism. Qualitative research aspires to study the empirical world as natural, undisturbed, unaltered, or unadulterated as possible. Further, whatever thus studied is aspired to be represented as scrupulously with a claim of high fidelity to the empirical world. This requires a cultural immersion, which means getting close to a community, know the participants as a real member of the community, become part of their life, and observe the field unobtrusive. The situations studied are typically banal and normal ones, reflecting the everyday life of individuals and groups. Qualitative research hence requires an intense and prolonged contact with the community. Importance of context and emphasis on holism. Any behavior or process studied is located in its context, and meaning of such behavior or process is derived from and consistent with the context. Context facilitates the prediction, explanation, and understanding of phenomena. It also implies that the process of inquiry, methods, and tools used will be context dependent and will evolve along with the unfolding social reality and emergent themes. Holism is the other side of the same coin as that of contextualism. It implies that the issue of concern is studied in its entirety as a whole, interrelated with and configured by other aspects of social reality rather than as isolated entities. Intensive or in-depth and long-term. Qualitative research chooses to study a smaller community or organization over a longer period of time. This facilitates an intensive holistic study as natural as possible with a scope to focus on the context in great detail. Establishing an increasingly stronger rapport with the community becomes a possibility. The data collection process is not a one-time interaction between the researcher and the participant, but is long drawn with opportunities for several meetings in different locations and from different angles. The content and the quality of data collected changes as the study progresses. Flexible and evolving study design. As the data collection process is long, the researcher need not and cannot go with a pre-decided plan of data collection and be blind to the new research questions that are thrown up by emerging data. Hence, a researcher need not go with a neatly planned and rigid study design. The data collection process is expected to constantly respond to new observations and research questions that emerge from the field. The researcher constantly engages with the data collected and reflexively reformulates research questions, data collection procedures, etc. Methods of data collection depend on research questions, and these questions depend on the context as it unfolds. Research rules are more like principles to follow, and data collection instruments require relatively little standardization. Study of social life as a process. A holistic and intensive study also provides qualitative studies with the potential to study a phenomena as a process. As Bremen points out, there is an implicit longitudinal element built into much qualitative research, hence they become most suitable to study social life as a process rather than as time-frozen events. Insider's perspective. Qualitative research tries to interpretatively understand insiders, that is, emic perspective, than explain events or process from outside. It aims to understand the meaning attributed by members of the community embedded within their worldview to any event or process. Context-specific meanings are the aspiration rather than universal decontextualized explanations for human behavior. Data collection methods. Data collected in qualitative studies are usually in the form of narratives and descriptions. In-depth interviews and participant observations are the principal methods of data collection used in qualitative research. Other methods include textual analysis, focus group discussion, and participatory methods. Ethnography and case study are composite methods that use a combination of methods so far discussed. Ethnography is considered as the qualitative method par excellence, which typically involves a researcher residing in the community that is being studied for over a period of time, immersing herself or himself in that culture and studying it holistically. It combines in-depth unstructured interview and participant observation. Case study is a study of one. It could be study of one culture, one organization, or an event in entirety. A case can be studied for its intrinsic value or as instrumental to understand a class of phenomena of which the chosen case is a typical representative. Typically, in case study, the number of variables studied far outstrips the number of data points. Case study as method is most frequently used in situations where phenomenon studied is too complex, without a clear boundary, without a clear disconnect with its context. Interviews used are unstructured and informal. These interviews lack structure or control. An informant is free to treat a question as he or she likes, usually with no written set of questions conducted in natural settings. One gets more than one chance to interview an informant. Thus, a researcher may start the first encounter as a casual chat to get introduced, gain rapport, and get a feeling about the community or group. Progressively, the researcher may infuse a sense of purpose, order, and rigor into this process. In the subsequent encounters, the researcher comes out with a clear purpose in her or his mind, may feel free to jot down points or electronically record them, and could even come prepared with a checklist or an interview guide. These interviews are combined with observation. A researcher, after gaining acceptance and rapport in the community, is able to observe the happening in the community or group without creating strong reactions or resentment from their members. Notwithstanding her or his presence in the community, the members may remain natural and unperturbed. Hence, the researcher is able to observe the behavior and interactions of individuals in as natural a setting as possible. Data analysis. Data analysis in qualitative research is preferred to be a concurrent process taking place along with data collection. This is because data collection is usually a protracted process. A researcher has the opportunity to look at the data and to read, to reread, and to grapple with the field notes continuously throughout the period of data collection. Gaps in the data, when identified, are sought to be filled with further data collection. New patterns and explanations are arrived at and tested back in the field. Thus, the researcher moves back and forth between the field and the field nodes. Through this continuous process of reflexive, iterative engagement with the field and the data, the researcher starts to have a rudimentary understanding of community, arrives at categories and concepts, and develops rudimentary explanations, all of which in turn are expected to lead to a higher level of explanation or theory. The specific practical aspects of qualitative data analysis have been brought out in many different ways by different scholars. Whatever may be the approach to analysis, all of them essentially involve a cycle of three fundamental interrelated concepts, that is, noticing, collecting, and thinking. Then let us look at knowledge generation as an iterative process. Synthesis of new knowledge in any field is best understood as an iterative cyclic process. A set of individual empirical observations may lead to the formation of a corpus of knowledge having an explanatory relevance, which in due course may evolve and solidify into a theory. This theory may get challenged by further observations, thus getting further refined into a more robust and rigorous one. This theory assumes a degree of tenacity, stands relevant over a longer period, and hence forms the basis for deducing explanations for further observations. The cycle continues with the theory evolving to be more robust and at the same time the reality that the theory aspires to explain also dynamically varying. In other words, knowledge generation over a period of time happens through a cyclic process alternating between induction, hypothesis formation, deduction, prediction, observation, test of prediction, induction, and so on. It may be useful here to recall the idea of hermeneutic cycle as the foundational law of all interpretation. Understanding and knowledge, which essentially refers to find the spirit of the whole through the individuals and through the whole to grasp the individual. Different sciences and methodological approaches within each discipline may emphasize different phases of this cycle, depending upon the way these disciplines' approaches look at reality, the part of the reality they choose to study, and the kind of problems they may choose to address. Unlike in disciplines like mathematics or physics, social sciences like sociology or anthropology do not have any invariant law or theories that hold good over time and across all societies. Hence, they cannot fall back on any such laws to deduce an explanation for a new observation. Instead, these disciplines continuously induct newer observations into a body of evolving explanation to arrive at a relatively more robust explanation for a set of related observations. However, as the reality studied is dynamically varying across societies and time, there is always a need for increasingly refined, altered, and nuanced explanations, and hence the cycle continues. The research spiral. Individually, every research is also usually understood as a cyclic or spiral process. For different scholars and in different disciplines, the cycle may be represented slightly in different ways, but more or less the fundamental set of stages of research could be enumerated as given in the figure. Exploring the conceptual field, arriving at research problem, designing the study, collecting data, analyzing the data, coming up with findings, and to make inferences that perhaps would feed into new research questions, and so on. Though these stages of research are usually considered to be sequential in nature, some of the stages within this cycle could be iterative in nature rather than as one-shot activities. Further, it is also possible that at any stage a loop back to any previous stage is potentially possible and is frequently the case. Having said this, it may be useful to make a distinction between two research approaches that are fundamentally different from each other and the way the respective research cycles could be construed, that is quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative approach to research prescribes a priori design and structure to the process of inquiry. This approach primarily aims at arriving at the facts that have scope for standardization or broad generalization. This approach, by intent and design, advocates a linearly linked stages of research that are neatly separated from each other and not porous to allow corruption of one stage by another unless or otherwise ordained in the a priori design. For instance, within a single research, data collection and data analysis are two distinct stages of activities, and as a norm, data analysis begins after the process of data collection is completed. Further, the exact manner in which the research will be expected, including finer details, is desired to be meticulously planned and explicitly stated in advance as part of the study design. This sort of disciplining and standardization are required as the purpose of such researches is to arrive at universally relevant facts on distribution, association, causation, effectiveness, efficiency, etc. of any aspect of concern. Most quantitative research falls in this group, although one has to add a caveat that not all quantitative studies by default fall into this category. Research cycles in qualitative research. In light of the purpose of using qualitative research and its key features, the research cycles in this approach is relatively more complex. Although the broad stages of research remains more or less same, it requires further elaboration. To explore and to capture unexpected findings, the study design is expected to be open, flexible, and evolving rather than pre-decided at the outset. To capture reality as a stream of processes and to gain inside its perspective, data collection process is protracted with an inbuilt longitudinality and aims to gain access to people's life gradually. Every stage of research in this approach becomes iterative in nature and celebrates interlocking of one stage of research into others in order to enrich the process of inquiry. The qualitative research cycle suggested by Henning, Hutter, and Bailey captures this complexity to a great extent. They conceive the research process in three distinct but interrelated subcycles circumscribed within a larger cycle. The three subcycles include the design cycle, the ethnographic cycle, and the analytic cycle. The design cycle captures the entire process of conceptualization up to arriving at a broad design of the study, roughly what is captured by the first three blocks as shown in figure, starting from exploring the conceptual field along with the backward loops. The ethnographic cycle represents the process of qualitative data collection. It shows the iterative nature of the data collection, moving between designing the instrument, identifying study participants, data collection, and making inferences in a cycle. This underlines that the data collection is not a one-time activity but a protracted one. One starts with an initial set of informants, but as the study proceeds, a new set of informants are progressively identified, informed by the data that gets collected, explanations and new questions that emerge from the field. Accordingly, the data collection instruments are altered and refined to meet the challenges posed by the field. The analysis cycle captures the component of data analysis with sub-elements of developing codes, description, and comparison, categorizing and conceptualizing data and theory development in an interlinked cyclic manner. Similar exclusive treatment of data analysis is undertaken by Ritchie and Spencer in their model of framework analysis, where analysis is seen in terms of a series of steps after data collection, that is, familiarization, identifying a thematic framework, indexing, charting, mapping, and interpretation. A much simpler representation of qualitative data analysis is given by Seidel in a cycle of three fundamental interrelated components, that is, noticing, collecting, and thinking. Apart from conceiving the qualitative research in the form of multiple subcycles, Henning and others emphasize three significant points in their idea of qualitative research cycle. 1. Within each subcycle, the activities listed are not only interlinked and iterative, but they could also happen simultaneously. 2. The three subcycles representing the process of conceptualizing the research, data collection, and analysis are strongly interconnected and they feed forward and backward into one another. 3. While qualitative research is usually considered to be primarily inductive in nature, Henning and others emphasize that the process of induction continuously alternates with deductive reasoning. This implies that at every stage a body of knowledge emerges from the field through the process of induction, but that body is used as a reservoir of knowledge to deduce from for further refinement of the exploratory and explanatory process. This reflects our understanding of data collection, data analysis, and theory building as enunciated in classical grounded theory through the process of analytical induction, constant comparison, and theoretical sampling. One key point, although implied in Hutter-Henning qualitative research cycle, but not sufficiently highlighted and brought, is the possibility of simultaneity of occurrence of all the three cycles. In qualitative research literature, the simultaneity of especially data collection and analysis has been strongly emphasized. In fact, these stages of research could happen concurrently or even they may coalesce with each other. This is popularly represented as shown in figure and differentiated from terminal analysis. The first figure represents the sequential and distinct process of data collection followed by data analysis. The second picture shows data collection and data analysis as concurrent process. In the initial days of fieldwork, data collection is more intensive compared to data analysis, but even at this state, the process of analysis gets started. As the fieldwork proceeds, progressively, the intensity of data analysis increases in proportion to the intensity of data collection, and towards the end of the fieldwork, data analysis becomes highly intensive, but data collection too continues at a minimal level.
To conclude, it may be said that for social science researchers, the field is the empirical world. Qualitative research aims to explore the empirical world as natural, undisturbed, unaltered as possible. Qualitative research chooses to study a smaller community or organization over a longer period of time. But we have discussed as part of this how to establish a stronger rapport with the community in this module. The data collection process is open, flexible, and qualitative research tries to interpretatively understand insiders' perspective rather than outsiders' perspective. In this module, we have also learned that every stage of research is cyclic in nature in the form of three distinct but interconnected subcycles, namely design, ethnographic, and analytic cycles. These stages of research could happen concurrently or even coalesce with each other. Thank you.